The Heat are getting ready to host the Sixers for yet another must-win game with a huge impact on the standings, and the reigning MVP will be trying to keep Miami away from victory. How did Joel Embiid look in his return, and what's in store for the Heat? Plus, Heat fans are buzzing about Terry Rozier's recent stretch, and expectations are high leading into the playoffs. Has he been a perfect fit? And the latest breakdown of the Eastern Conference standings, all that and more on today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. I'm Wes Goldberg, editor at allyoucanheat.com, and joining me as always is NBA media member David Ramil. However you're tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, or your favorite podcast app, thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. April 5th, this Friday, we are holding the Locked On Heat watch party for the Heat's game against the Rockets. It's at the Taurus in Coconut Grove. Happy hour will be extended throughout the game. David and I will be there again, April 5th at the Taurus at Coconut Grove. Heat Rockets. Game starts at 8 p.m. Eastern. We can't wait to see you there. We'll get to why Terry Rozier might be the perfect Heat player and take a look at the updated playoff picture later on. But let's start with Joel Embiid, who made his return after missing more than 2 months with a torn meniscus in the Sixers win over the Thunder on Tuesday night. The 76ers, of course, are coming to Miami to face the Heat on Thursday. Joel Embiid's status still questionable as we record this. The team is sort of waiting to see how that knee responds from playing 30 minutes on Tuesday night. But what did you think of how Embiid looked in his return, David?
He looked okay. I think it was pretty, like, you look at the final stat line, they came away with a victory in Oklahoma City against a good team in Oklahoma City, and it looks much more impressive. But I think watching his performance, he did not look dominant, which was our biggest concern leading into Thursday's matchup. Was if he's going to be back at anywhere near full strength, that makes him much more dangerous than most any other player in the NBA. But I think he looked a little passive, again, to be totally understandable considering the return from injury and everything else like that. A lot of fadeaway jumpers, not really much around the rim anyway. 0 for 3 from three-point range. And what surprised me the most, 12 trips to the goddamn free throw line. So apparently the new officiating rules apply to everybody except Joel Embiid, at least on Tuesday night. So that was a little strange. And I understand it's a byproduct of his size. And again, he does sell whatever contact, however minimal it might be, to a huge degree. And so that makes things a lot more difficult for referees. And it was his first game back. So I don't know. If we're going to get that version, if Miami is going to see that version on Thursday of Joel Embiid, I'm okay with it, because I think the Thunder didn't do a particularly good job of defending him, giving him a lot of space on those 18 to 25 footers, and a lot of fadeaway jump shots also. And if that's gonna be the most of what his offensive repertoire is going to be like, I'm okay with that, and I think Miami would be too.
You mentioned getting to the foul line. I mean, one thing I was curious to see, do we get the Joel Embiid stumble right away when he comes back after injuring the knee? And within the first couple of minutes of the game, he takes a fall, and it's not called his way, and Nick Nurse goes ahead and challenges it, and the whole thing. So I'm like, okay, the Joel Embiid stumble is back. He's right back to falling over and hitting the floor all the time. Like, that was there. So it was. Look, he did look a little rusty. He was playing in very short, like 5 and 6 minute bursts to kind of make sure that to maintain his conditioning and all that stuff. And even, at the end of each one of these bursts, I mean, hands on knees, sweating,
Sure.
like all this stuff. Again, what you would expect after having not played and as long as he hasn't played. But there were also moments where he looked like Joel Embiid, right? Like, he did have some, like, that fadeaway jumper is back. Like, that free throw line jumper is there. It's never left. It's a weapon, and it's going to be the biggest thing that the Heat have to contend with. He ended up with 24 points, 6 rebounds, 7 assists on the game. He did have a moment late in the game. Like, defensively, you could just tell his presence made so much of a difference for Philadelphia, who had a losing record without Joel Embiid, and obviously were awesome with Joel Embiid. And he has not been, he's obviously not 100%, but just his size in the middle changes everything for Philadelphia. His passing as a hub of offense, again, on the middle of the court on offense, changes everything for Philadelphia. There was a play late in the game, actually, where he came across the lane and blocked a Lou Dort layup attempt. And that was maybe the most impressive thing that he did the entire night, was the defensive play. Now, again, that took a lot out of him, right? And so I don't know how much of that kind of stuff he has in him. I said, as we kind of looked ahead going into this, and anticipating Joel Embiid's return, if he could be 85% of what he was when he was putting together another MVP caliber campaign, then not only were the Miami Heat in trouble, but the Eastern Conference was in trouble because he was that good. And I clocked him in as about 70% yesterday.
I think it
Which
might
is
be even overly generous.
It might be. It might be. And if that's the case, then I don't know how much better he'll be on Thursday. And by the way, he's still listed as questionable on Thursday, so we don't know that he's going to play. Also, Tyrese Maxey probably not going to play. D'Anthony Melton probably not going to play. So the Sixers are going to be shorthanded probably no matter what. That said, I thought if I were a Sixers fan, I'd be encouraged, I think, by what I saw from Joel Embiid, considering the time off that he had and that he still has about 2 weeks to ramp up before the playoffs.
No doubt. I mean, we're not talking about bigger picture here, although we can. In terms of Thursday's matchup, he's not going to be anywhere near the dangerous player he was. And so I still, again, I remain optimistic on behalf of the Heat that they'll be able to handle this version of Embiid. In different circumstances, if he's significantly better over the next couple of weeks and they have to meet for in a one-game plan, that's a little different. For one game on Thursday night, I think they can do a pretty good job. You know, a lot of you mentioned him being the hub on offense. You're going to pick and roll everybody to death there. It's just a matter of having to find the right switches. A lot of those assist numbers too might be a little inflated. It was basically just running pick and roll, and then the ball handler kind of flaring open for a 3-pointer or something like that. So he gets credit for the assist. It wasn't exactly, it wasn't like he was making dimes all over the court. Although there were some good passes also to Tobias Harris from beyond the arc, and he was able to knock those down. So it was a good shooting night for Harris, and I think that helped make Embiid look much more ingrained in the offense. But I mean, he is their biggest offensive hub without a doubt, and so that was pretty much on display. And I would imagine it would be on Thursday as well.
I'll tell you one thing: Kyle Lowry picked up that pick and roll pocket pass to Joel Embiid right away. Like, that is a weapon for Philadelphia right now. A number of times Lowry just coming off that screen, finding Embiid at that free throw line, getting him into that jumper. That's going to be something that Miami needs to watch out for on Thursday night, is just Kyle Lowry picking them apart with those passes to Joel Embiid. How do you guard that? I would assume you hedge over towards Embiid because the Heat know better than anybody else that Kyle Lowry probably doesn't want to shoot that ball. And it didn't really feel like the Oklahoma City Thunder got the memo on the fact that Lowry's probably not going to shoot it a whole lot. And it felt like they maybe hedged a little too hard towards Lowry and not enough towards Embiid. And they were without Jalen Williams and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and Chet Holmgren's been a little banged up lately. But the Heat are going to have to look out for that. I have the injury report here in front of me right now. Robert Covington is out. D'Anthony Melton is out. Embiid, Tobias Harris, who's dealing with a knee hyperextension, and Tyrese Maxey, who's still dealing with that hip tightness. They're all listed as questionable right now. That's us recording it right before 6 p.m. Wednesday night. We'll see what happens. The Heat, they're still without Tyler Hero. They're going to be without Josh Richardson, but everybody else seems like they're going to be a go for this game. Yeah. A big game with a lot of playoff stakes, but maybe even bigger to just see, like, you're not going to be able to glean much from it, but it at least is Joel Embiid playing, and we'll be able to glean something from it.
Yeah, no, I think it does have, how does Miami respond? Like the response on Tuesday after beating the Knicks again, and I know the Knicks were missing some key players, that's fine. But being able to handle Jalen Brunson as well as they did, being able to limit that team and impose their defensive will, I think was remarkable. And so I think if Miami responds in kind on Thursday against the Sixers, even with a lesser version of Joel Embiid, it's still a good indicator of where Miami is from a mental perspective as they kind of get near towards the playoffs. You've got other matchups there that could be dangerous. Like, Tobias, if he does play, is a guy who can hurt Miami. Kelly Oubre is certainly a guy who had a big game against Miami earlier this year. So I think there are other players there who could step up as well. So it's if Miami is truly improved in the defensive end, and the numbers bear that out as they are now a top 5 defense in the NBA, I think it's a good test for them, and I'm curious to see how they respond.
The defense has been trending, like you said, finally back into the top 5 in defensive rating. Terry Rozier has also been trending in the right direction. Should this recent stretch from Terry Rozier have the front office rethinking their offseason plans? We're going to talk about that next here on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by Fire TV, your destination for sports, live games, highlights, in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick. You can just plug that into your existing TV, and that provides access to millions of movies, TV, as well as free and live TV, whether it's opening weekend for baseball, the NCAA tournament, whatever you're looking for, you're going to find it on Fire TV. They've recently created Fire TV channels that deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. And that includes all of us over at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. For TV channels, they let you drive into all of the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date on the latest in the world of sports, from the NBA playoff race, the start of Major League Baseball. I'm sorry, the Marlins have not won a game yet. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos, whatever you're looking for. You're going to find it on Fire TV. If you haven't checked it out, check out the Fire TV channels. You definitely should. Trust me on this. To learn more, go visit Amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. Today's episode is also brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. The sports calendar is loaded, and FanDuel is making it even more excited to get in on the action, because right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet the tournament, Major League Baseball, NBA, of course, the NHL. So much is going on in the sports landscape right now. You're going to want to maybe go check out FanDuel. So go visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and make your first bet a big win. That's FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and on your favorite podcast app. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all that screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Here's what Kevin Love said about Terry Rozier following Rozier's 34-point game against the Knicks.
I suppose talking about Terry Rozier getting, that time to get comfortable, how much do you see him fully himself after a game like this?
Yeah, he's definitely, arrived into a role where he's able to be himself. We've wanted him to be that early on, when he got here. But I think it's like when I first got here, I wanted it so bad. But he's been, a childhood fan of this organization and this team. So I feel like he's finally settled in, and it's an amazing thing to see. Just him, getting back to being Scary Terry and being Terry Rozier.
So Terry's not been shy about wanting to play for the Miami Heat and his appreciation for Heat culture. He grew up a huge Dwayne Wade fan. All of these things. When you hear Kevin Love say that, how even Kevin Love last year when he got to Miami after getting bought out by Cleveland, he just wanted it so bad. And the it there is just like wanting to be an impactful player, wanting to help this team win. Terry Rozier obviously wanting it very bad, but as you and I have discussed several times already, it was rough, right? It was a little rough for those first couple of weeks. Terry Rozier in his first 14 games in a Heat uniform, 13.9 points on 38.8% shooting, 26.5% on three-pointers. Those are just flatly bad numbers, but it has turned recently, David. Terry Rozier, in his last 14 games following the 34-point outburst against the Knicks on Tuesday night, here are his stats in his last 14 games: 19.6 points on 46.3% shooting, 42.4% on threes. Much more in line than in terms of what he was able to do in 4.5 seasons in Charlotte. So, look, he's trending in the right direction right when the Heat need him to be sort of having that positive regression back to the mean. What do you think of Terry Rozier's fit now that we're 28 games into this thing? And do you think of him as a long-term piece in Miami?
I think he's been a perfect addition for Miami. And it's all tying together just as we had explained that it could be. Like when the trade first took place and you're taking an optimistic view of it, and you're looking at what Terry brings to the table, the long range shooting, the ability to get to the rim, etc. Like those, we know what Terry was capable of, what he had done in Boston and in Charlotte. And then you're kind of hoping that you'll get that version of him. And not only that, but also, as you mentioned before, all of the factors off the court, the love of the team, the franchise, the culture, Dwayne Wade, all these things are an important factor. And yet, he struggled because I think we underestimate how difficult it is for a player to make that transition right away. I think with trade culture now and transaction fandom across the NBA, this assumption is that you're going to bring in a player at the trade deadline and boom, he's going to make an immediate impact. And we rarely see that to be the case. I'm trying to think of all the names that were traded at the deadline and struggling to remember one that has been like overtly impactful. Like we were just talking about.
Even like Buddy Hield with the Sixers,
he's not even starting.
Yeah, it doesn't really feel like he's doing a whole lot.
No. And a lot of people, again, he's like, oh, he's this guy who's shooting 40% in Indiana. It's like, yeah, well, it hasn't translated as easily. And again, that's a loss of Embiid that, kind of coincided with that, but it's a difficult transition. And I'm kudos to Kevin for pointing that out, is that, that there's a lot of off the court stuff. You got to move your family. You got to find a new place to live. You're kind of living out of a suitcase. And I know a lot of fans might say, oh, boo hoo, they're still millionaires, whatever. You don't want to necessarily be under those kind of conditions for a prolonged period of time and then have to, at the same time, be your very best as a professional athlete and going out there in front of 20,000 fans and say, you better put up 30 because that's kind of what we need for you. And, there were sparks here and there. There were signs of how good he could be, but we're starting to see him just become more and more comfortable. He is being the perfect version of the player that we thought the Heat were getting when the trade took place. And it's just worked out really well. As far as his future with the team, I don't see why you wouldn't want to make him a long-term piece. This isn't a knock on Tyler or anybody else. Roster construction, that ain't my bag. That's up to, Andy Ellison and everybody else and Ellsberg, and Pat Riley to figure out. As far as Terry's fit right now, he has been as great as advertised, and I think it's going to be better even in the playoffs. We're going to see big games from him. And I think in terms of the long-term future, he's young, he's athletic, he still has a bright future ahead of him, and he's found a comfortable fit here where he can continue to be the scorer, the guy who kind of takes on the brunt of the offensive load and just says, you know what, I'll take those shots. If nobody's capable of or willing to take them, just leave it up to me and I'll take us there. And that's great level of confidence. I'm just happy for him and for the acquisition because it's worked out so well for both.
His fit has been exactly what the Heat have been looking for. Eric Spoelstra talked about it last night. We talked about it on the podcast, just how he's able to make those tough shots at the end of shot clocks and all these things. And the stuff that he's doing with the step back 3-pointers and the sidestep 3-pointers, like we have never seen a Miami Heat point guard ever do that. And I'm not here telling you that Terry Rozier is the best Miami Heat point guard ever. What I'm saying is that we have never seen a Heat point guard do these specific things. And these specific things are exactly what the Miami Heat need right now. I think they hit a home run at the trade deadline, and all it cost them was Kyle Lowry's expiring contract and a first-round pick. It was a steal, and it might be the steal of the trade deadline. It was a great point you just made. Like, I could go. I don't have the list in front of me, but it might be a good exercise to go through it at some point. But not only is he doing that stuff at the end of the clock, the pick and roll chemistry with Bam Adebayo has been awesome. A lot of those shots in the fourth quarter last night came out of that initial action of a Bam Adebayo, Terry Rozier pick and roll. The lob stuff, we've talked about the numbers here before, but like as many lobs since acquiring Terry Rozier in half as many games as they had before getting Terry Rozier. Like the lob is a real thing that they can do, and Terry Rozier is great at throwing those lobs to Bam and to Highsmith and to these other and Caleb and everybody else. So that's been a big part of his game too. Also, like when he's not on the ball, he's making an impact off the ball. Over his last 10 games as a catch and shoot shooter, Terry Rozier is shooting 48.7% on catch and shoot attempts. That's a ridiculous number. And that's exactly when you're talking about guys who fit next to Bam and next to Jimmy, the two tentpole stars, what everything is built around. Terry Rozier is a perfect fit because he does the thing off the ball that you need, make those catch and shoot shots. He does the stuff on the ball that you need. Hey, can you run some pick and roll offense and carry the load for a couple of stretches of games so that Jimmy doesn't have to? He's doing all those things. Eric Spoelstra talks a lot about how he competes defensively. The numbers, like the advanced stats, haven't really bore that out yet, but the eye test is more friendly than the numbers right now when it comes to Rozier on defense. He's got 2 more years under contract after this. He's 30 years old. I think if you're the Heat, you don't trade a first-round pick for Terry Rozier unless you think that he's going to probably complete his contract with Miami, right? Like, you're not trading like future stuff just for some sort of short-term solution if you think that you're going to try to move off of him this summer. That said, they do have to move off of somebody this summer, it feels like, between Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero, and Terry Rozier. It just feels like one of those big contracts is going to go because the other 2 big contracts on this team are Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo, and it doesn't really feel like the Heat are moving off of them. I know we've talked a little bit about Jimmy Butler before, but it's such an extreme thing right now that it feels like not even worth getting into. But I don't know. Like, the Heat are going to have to make a move. They're too close to that second tax apron. It has nothing to do with the players. It just, like, they literally can't afford this team because they don't have enough guys under contract, and they're going to have to go over the second tax apron just to fill out the 15-man roster. And we know that they're not going to do that. So one of these 5 big contracts has to go. That's a conversation for another day. Yeah. But with Terry Rozier playing like this, he is making a strong case to not be that contract that leaves because his fit is so good with the guys who make this team go, and he's been one of the guys that makes this team go lately. So anything else on that before?
No, I mean, I'm glad that we're not really delving into the idea of is he a long-term piece and who gets traded if he is, because right now I think the focus for the team, the franchise, and certainly the fans is just like, what can we see from Terry, as the next few games lead into the playoffs? Because again, I think that's why there's so much cause for optimism, so much buzz building around his performances of late, because he does provide something that was missing. Like, just consider the finals, right? And I know it's a completely different team and things have changed since then, but when Miami's offense bogged down against Denver, and I mean, he would have been such a tremendous spark. And I'm not saying that they would have outright won it or anything like that, but their chances got a whole hell of a lot better, had they had somebody like Terry available in the NBA finals. So it's just, I think fans should have high hopes because it's panned out so well. And I think, again, it's going to continue to do so. And this isn't to preclude like Bam stepping up or Jimmy having monster games or anybody. Like, that's the whole thing. That's how it's worked out. It's like, what, if we're going to have situations where you got to go to a player late in a shot clock, why can't it be Terry Rozier and then everybody else still find ways to contribute for the other 46 minutes of gameplay? There's a lot to be optimistic about when you're looking at this team as it heads into the playoffs.
One other thing that doesn't get talked about enough when it comes to Terry Rozier, very durable, like very durable. Has played, has only played since his rookie year, has never played less than 63 games in a season.
Right.
63 games, 73 games, 69 games, 63 games the last 4 years. And some of those were COVID-shortened seasons. So I know, knocking on wood here. Knocking on wood there.
He already had his major injury, right? So it's okay.
Don't look now, but the playoff bracket might be breaking right for the Heat. How's that for a tease? Coming up next on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by Robinhood Confidential. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar that you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good just through April 30th. So get started at Robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees do apply. And now for some legal info. The claim as of the first quarter of 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Make sure you are subscribed on YouTube and on your favorite podcast app. Again, like the video on YouTube. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Do it now. Don't wait.
We've been stuck at like 12.6 subscribers for like a week or so.
Yeah.
Like, what's going on?
Road to 13K, baby. Get us there. The Heat are winning. Yeah. Everybody's trending in the right direction. Get us to 13K. That's what we want to do.
Watch party, everybody. It's all good vibes and buzzing, and everything else is really good times right now.
That's right. Let's take a look at the standings. Speaking of good vibes, the Miami Heat half game out of 6th place, where the Indiana Pacers currently reside. playoff status, Basketball Reference, all the various playoff seed trackers and odds makers basically have the Pacers and the Heat neck and neck to get that 6th seed. It would take quite a bit for Philadelphia at this point to pull into 6. Kind of feels like they're basically just trying to hold off, not falling back from 8, which feels like that they're going to be able to do now with Joel Embiid back. But certainly Thursday night's game is a big one for a lot of reasons. But if the Heat win on Thursday night and continue to win, it still feels like they've probably got to win 5 more games. They have 7 more games left. They probably got to go 5-2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah. 5-2 over this final stretch to really feel good about getting that 6th seed. But here's the point that I want to make instead of just standings watching and counting half games here and tiebreakers there. You look at the current playoff picture in the Eastern Conference, and there's the potential here for the bracket in the East to break exactly the way that the Miami Heat would want it to break, regardless of if they have to make it out of the play-in tournament and into the playoffs, or if they actually do get this number 6 seed. And obviously you prefer to just get the 6th seed. But either way, if they end up having to play the 7-8 game against the Sixers in that play-in tournament, and let's say they go ahead and win that, right? Then they would obviously be the 7th seed. They would play the number 2 seed Milwaukee Bucks, who, even according to Doc Rivers, are not professional enough at this juncture of the season and have their own various issues going on right now.
He's been taking notes.
On the travel staff? Like, I don't even need, for reference, if any of you, just go read the quotes if our listeners don't know what we're talking about here. But Doc Rivers, of course, throwing people under the bus as he is wont to do. Nothing shocking there, but I don't know. I know that they've been without Damian Lillard for a couple of games and stuff like that, but just their defense is in the toilet, and it's not like Damian Lillard's exactly helping them on that end either. So, I'm not scared of the Milwaukee Bucks, you know? And if that ends up being the first round matchup for Miami, then we could see something very similar to what happened to last season when Miami upset Milwaukee. And then if that were to happen, in the second round, they would play the winner of Cavs Pacers if the playoffs started today. And nothing against the Cavs or the Pacers, but I think no matter who won that series, a lot of people would be picking Miami in that series. But more importantly, it avoids the New York Knicks, who are on the other side of the bracket, along with the Orlando Magic and the number 1 seed Boston Celtics. So there's a chance where Miami, even if they had to get it out of the play-in tournament, would play a disorganized Milwaukee Bucks team, and then either the Cavs or the Pacers in that second round, all to get to the Eastern Conference Finals, which at that point, anything can happen, right? And then on the flip side, too, if the Heat end up getting the 6th seed, then you just swap places with the Pacers, and then the Heat have to play the Cavs in the first round, which, again, I think most people would be picking the Heat over the Cavs in that series.
No doubt.
And then you play the winner of Bucks, whoever comes out of the play-in tournament, the Pacers, the Sixers, whoever it might be. Now,
right.
Who knows what Joel Embiid looks like at that point? Can Embiid and the Sixers and Tyrese Maxey and the Sixers beat the Bucks? And are they really a contender if Joel Embiid looks anything like the MVP guy that he was before the injury? All that stuff is a huge and enormous X factor. But my point is, this kind of feels like the best case scenario for Miami, considering that all the teams in the playoffs are ostensibly good teams anyway. This would be the best version of the bracket and the way that it could break for Miami.
Yeah, it does seem that way, right? And again, a lot of that goes into whether or not Miami can continue to stay healthy, especially if they can get Tyler back and things of that sort. So there a lot can change, and we should put that caveat out there, is that, you know, obviously a lot can on either side, whether you're an opponent or whether it's Miami themselves. But as far as potential matchups are concerned, it does look like it's breaking favorably. But I'll be 100% honest with you right now. I feel like Miami is in as good a place as they can be, and I think they're not scared of any opponent. I don't think that they have any concerns about taking on, if somehow they drop to the 8th seed, if they took on Boston in the first round, I think they'd be fine with it. I think they'd be fine just getting it out of the way now and finding a way to advance past the Celtics. I know it's going to be a tough challenge. It's going to be a lot of fiery competition to start off the playoffs, but you know what? That could be a really fun matchup. And if Miami finds a way to prevail, I don't think it would be any different if they shocked this Celtics team than it was last year when they shocked the Bucks. Like, that was, again, an 8th seed taking on a 1st seed and said, guess what? we're going to be just the second team in NBA history to do it. Why not be the third team in NBA history to do it? So I think it would be a lot of fun for them. But yeah, I
there
get
is
what
a
you're
best
saying.
case and a worst case scenario though, and also like we're recording this on Wednesday before the games start getting played. People are going to hear this Thursday morning, so this whole bracket could be different because the Magic play the Pelicans tonight, and depending if they win or lose, the Knicks could end up back in that 4 seed, and at that point, then the Knicks are back into the bracket. But the point, like, there's so much more basketball yet to be played, and there is a scenario where if you're picking teams that you have to avoid or that you would prefer to avoid, it would probably Boston would be the number 1 team to avoid, and then for Miami's purposes, it might be the Knicks. It might be the number 2 team to avoid, and there's an opportunity here where they're both on the other side of the bracket if the Heat can take care of business and do what they have to do. The bad part is if they actually do repeat what they did last year and lose the first play-in game and end up at the 8th seed, then there's a potentiality of them to end up on the same side of the bracket of both those teams again. So there's that too. But
the flip side of this is, again, kind of what happened last year. For just to prove the naysayers wrong, and I know that's kind of a minimal concern here, but so many people look at even last year's run and be like, oh, they just caught fire from 3, or they got a lot of injuries go their way, etc. Whether it's Tatum's ankle or Giannis in the first round. So it kind of, if I'm the Heat, my thought process would be like, it doesn't really matter who we're taking on. But so I see your point. I see your point completely. I guess logically, you should try to avoid the Celtics and Knicks if possible. But at the same time,
you
there's
just
a part
try to
of
get
me,
the 6th seed, which would be in
no
essence
doubt.
also avoiding Boston. I mean, logically, just get out of the play-in tournament. But I'm with you.
There's part of me also that's like,
these teams.
Yeah.
I'm with you
There's
on
part
that.
of me that's like, I don't care. Like I would just kind of want to take on those challenges right away and be like, no, we are this good. And sorry to remind.
What would be the most
everybody,
entertaining version? Wouldn't it be more entertaining to see Boston in the conference finals again? I think it would be a little disappointing to see them in the first round. Like, that would be kind of lame. I don't know.
On a personal level, I'd kind of like to see the Celtics fans cry a little bit. I mean, they cry even more. Yeah, but maybe but conversely, like if their hopes build up over a couple of rounds and they beat up a couple of teams and somehow manage to get beat up by the Knicks in the second round and then go on to the Eastern Conference Finals where Miami's there waiting for them, and then Miami gets to beat them again. I mean, that might be like that
would be kind of
actually might be a
interesting to
good
see Milwaukee in the
too.
first round too. And it's just like, hey, we were trying to get Dame, you ended up getting Dame, and we still beat you in the first round again after you fired your coach, then fired the other coach, made the huge franchise-altering move to swap out Drew Holiday for Damian Lillard, all because we beat you in the first round, and then you still ended up losing in the first round to the same team again in the second straight year, would be so many deep levels of humor. It would just it would hit all the check marks.
It really would.
At the risk of getting too ahead of ourselves, we will end the show there. I do want to give a shout out to Shane, who's an everyday listener from Ireland, from Cree College, whose under 14 squad is competing in the national championship. Good luck, boys. Good luck in your national championship. We are rooting for you all the way from here, from the States. So thanks for listening. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube and follow us on your podcast app.